Hello, dear friends. Personal data are becoming a commodity subject to patches, sale or theft for profit. This explains the frequent theft of personal databases from social networks. It is called surveillance capitalism, and it is a concept I've just discovered. Opinion piece. Money is watching you. Surveillance capitalism. Operating without consent. Data theft on the rise. Selling personal data. Commoditization of reality. Phishing is bait phishing. It seems the same word, but it writes different. Silver falls as gold falls. Empty shelves at grocery stores. Oil prices climb to 3-year highs. Macron condemns massacre of Algerians in 1961. Argentine judge prosecutes former minister Martin Villa. New Zealand's official magician fired after 20 years. Martin Villa was a Spanish minister. Let's start. Surveillance capitalism is a concept used and popularized since 2013 by social psychologist Shoshana Zuboff that refers to the commodification of personal data. It is to say, the transformation of personal information into a commodity subject to buying, selling, or stealing for profit. Identity theft is one of the fastest growing consumer crimes, costing its victims close to $5 billion a year in the US. Last June, a mysterious Trojan, about which there is little information, managed to slip through the cracks of many systems on which it has been installed, and managed to steal no less than 1.2 terabytes of personal data, including passwords, user files, browser cookies, and other data, all collected without the owner's knowledge. Phishing scams. Phishing is a computer term that distinguishes a set of techniques that seek to devise a victim by gaining their trust by impersonating a trusted person, company, or service by impersonating a third party, in order to manipulate them and make them perform actions they should not perform. For example, revealing confidential information or clicking on a link. The term phishing comes from the English word fishing, alluding to using bait and waiting for victims to take the bait. The bait used can be very varied. Sometimes computer procedures that exploit vulnerabilities are also used. Usually the aim is to steal information, but other times it is to install malware, sabotage systems, or steal money through fraud. Carry out the deception. Social engineering is usually used exploiting people's gregarious instincts, such as the desire to help or to be useful. It is also done by flattering the victim, exploiting their vanity or need to be recognized, their low self-esteem, or a person looking for a job. For example, by sending emails or displaying advertisements to the victim, telling him or her that he or she has won a prize and to follow a link to receive it. Those promises being false bait. Deceiving a human being looking for a job is very wretched. Definition. Surveillance capitalism is a concept used and popularized since 2013 by sociologist Shoshana Zuboff that refers to the commoditization of personal data. It is to say, the transformation of personal information into a commodity subject to purchase and sale for profit. The medium on which the system of surveillance capitalism rests is the digital infrastructure. Internet networks, computer technologies, and human lives themselves are the indispensable means of production for supplying personal data, which are the real raw material of the system. Zuboff constructs the mass production of industrial capitalism with surveillance capitalism. For her, the former is interdependent on its populations, who are its consumers and employees, while the latter feeds on dependent populations who are neither its employees nor its consumers, and are largely unaware of its procedures. Zuboff observes that surveillance capitalism goes beyond the conventional institutional terrain of private enterprise, accumulating not only assets and surveillance capital, but also rights and operating without meaningful consent mechanisms. Surveillance has been changing power structures in the information economy. This phenomenon could present a shift in power structures beyond the nation-state and towards a form of corporatocracy. In 2014, Vincent Moscow called the marketing of customer and subscriber information to advertise as surveillance capitalism, taking note of the surveillance state manifesting itself alongside it. For Christian Fuchs, there is a convergence between the surveillance state and surveillance capitalism. Oliver Stone, director of the movie Snowden, pointed to the location-based video game Pokémon Go as the latest sign of the emerging phenomenon of surveillance capitalism. Economy. Profits for banks. Stocks rose Friday and the Dow Jones posted its biggest weekly percentage advance since June, as Goldman Sachs completed a week of solid quarterly earnings for big banks. U.S. offered payments relocation to family of Afghans killed in failed drone strike. The Pentagon has offered unspecified condolence payments to the family of 10 civilians killed in August in a failed drone strike in Afghanistan during the final days before U.S. troops withdraw from the country. Empty shelves in grocery stores. Supply chain concerns stem from congestion at the port of Los Angeles and Long Beach that has spread to the East Coast. Widespread power outages in China, shortages of truck drivers and service workers. Shipping prices have skyrocketed and demand for items has outstripped suppliers. Aircraft supplies short. Supply chain and global shipping disruptions are making it difficult for corporate aircraft manufacturers and suppliers to meet resurgent demand for parts. Silver falls and gold falls. The price of silver reversed lower, but held key support as copper price rose, helping to boost silver. Silver is also used in electrical conduction and industrial capacities, but is more expensive than copper. Gold prices fell, creating a dark cloud for the precious metal market. Oil prices rise to 3-year high. Oil prices settled at a 3-year high above $85 a barrel on Friday, boosted by forecasts of a supply shortfall in the coming months as easing travel restrictions spurred demand. Cryptocurrencies. This altcoin would rise 2,700% in the coming months. The VeChain token, VET, would be in an initial growth phase, and its price could multiply by almost 30 times by March 2022, according to some analysts' forecasts. They are printing money. Christopher Brendeler, an analyst at D.A. Davidson, a Wall Street research and investment banking firm, believes that cryptocurrency mining companies are literally printing money, reported the CoinDesk portal. East Asia cryptocurrency market halves. East Asia's crypto trading volume fell from 31% in the period from July 2019 to June 2020 to just 40% between July 2020 and June 2021. Europe. Housing shortage in Europe. As in Spain, housing shortages are a widespread problem in Europe's major cities, where ownership continues to outweigh renting, with some exceptions, and where there is a tendency to limit rents and offer direct aid to the most vulnerable groups. Macron condemns 1961 massacre of Algerians. France's president on Saturday denounced as an unforgivable crime a bloody crackdown of Algerian protesters by police in Paris 60 years ago, the strongest acknowledgement by a French president of a massacre in which many bodies were thrown into the Seine River. UK energy collapse. 13 supplies have collapsed in the last 2 months, and there are likely to be more to come as soaring prices sink companies. The failures have forced 2 million people to move supplier. The cost of absorbing those customers is already about $2.7 billion, which is spread among the companies. New Zealand's official magician is fired after more than 20 years of service. The man, now 88, was hired in 1998 to promote tourism. I Am Brackenbury Channel, an 88-year-old Briton who for 23 years worked as New Zealand's official magician in the city of Christchurch, performing acts of sorcery and performing magic tricks, has been sacked because he no longer fits the modern image of the city. I am of the opinion that life without magic is very boring. America. Argentine judge indicts former minister Martín Villa, former Spanish minister. Argentine judge María Servini de Cubría has indicted former Spanish minister Rodolfo Martín Villa, 87, for murder and torture during the dictatorship. The former minister is accused of allowing the murder of young Arturo Ruiz in 1977 on the March 3rd massacre in Vitoria, where 5 workers died, of the police repression in the Sanfermines of 1978, and of 5 deaths during the pro-amnesty week of May 1977. Organized crime in Americas. The Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime has published an international ranking of this type of crime. Colombia, Mexico, and Honduras appear in the top of 10. Other dangerous countries are Congo, Burma, Nigeria, Iran, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Central African Republic. Peru's economy grew by 18.6% during the first 8 months of this year. Growth last August reached 11.8% compared to the same month in 2020. Thus, the national gross domestic product reached for the 4th consecutive month a higher level than before the crisis. Young Bolivians collect ecoladrillos to make houses for dogs. Young Bolivians set to collect eco bricks made with PET bottles filled with plastic waste, with which they seek to build houses for dogs, while raising awareness about this type of waste and its effects on the environment. A gigantic mural composed of Amazonian ashes comes to life in Brazil, with more than 200 kilos of ashes collected from the Amazon and other biosystems that burnt in the recent fires in Brazil. The activist Mundano brings them back to life through his brush strokes in a huge mural in Sao Paulo, where he seeks to denounce the environmental degradation that plagues the country. Asia. India reopens its borders of foreign tourists 19 months later. India on Friday reopened its border for foreign tourists arriving in the country on charter flights 19th month after the Indian government restricted entry into the country. Bangladesh Muslim Hindu riots. At least 6 people have been killed, 2 of them confirmed on Saturday, since riots broke out in Bangladesh last Wednesday, when Muslim mobs attacked the Hindu minority after images were circulated in which the Quran was allegedly placed in the lap of a Hindu god. Turkish lira hits more record lows on rate cuts. Turkish lira hit fresh lows against the dollar and euro on Friday, paralyzed by concerns about more interest rate cuts despite high inflation, after President Tayyip Erdogan fired 3 central bank lawmakers. Attack on Shiite minority in Afghanistan. A new suicide bombing committed during Friday prayers at a Shiite minority mosque in Afghanistan cost at least 40 victims and 75 wounded in what appears to be a new attack by the jihadist group Islamic State, which had a similar action in another temple a week ago. The group claimed responsibility for the attack during Friday prayers in a mosque in the city of Kandahar. China. LinkedIn gives in to pressure from China and announces it will stop operating in the country. The Great Firewall, China's internet system, has claimed a new victim. LinkedIn, Microsoft's social network focused on connecting businesses and professionals, has announced that it will stop operating in the Chinese market by the end of 2021 due to the country's tight government control over foreign platforms. Instead, the company will launch InfoJobs, a new application in singular, without social networking functions and where only job offers can be posted. Evergrande suffers blow at $1.7 billion deal to sell its Hong Kong headquarters collapses. China Evergrande Group has failed to sell its largest asset to a state-backed Yuexu property, dealing a major blow to the debt-ridden developer's efforts to raise the funds it needs to survive. Africa. More than 7,250 Somalis displaced from Somaliland. More than 7,250 Somalis have already been displaced from the town of Las Anod in the self-proclaimed independent Somaliland region, located in the far north of Somalia. Congo protests turn violent. Police in the Democratic Republic of Congo used tear gas to break up clashes between supporters of the president and opposition leader on Saturday, as lawmakers elected a new electoral commission chief. Sudan protest calls for military coup. thousands of protesters gathered outside the presidential palace in Khartoum on Saturday to call on the military to seize power as Sudan faces the biggest political crisis in its 2-year transition. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.